Let's go to Matt and then Andrea.
Well, Dr. Webb, well, thank you for joining us. And I've got a two-part education question for you. First, regards the current situation with COVID-19 and what's going on in the fall. I'm a teacher, and there are plenty of teachers out there and also parents that are concerned as far as what education should look like in this current climate. There's discussions going across all kinds of different school boards here in Virginia, different recommendations. Some have decided, some have not decided. From a medical standpoint and also a policy standpoint, what would you best advise local school boards to do regarding school in the fall, policies, procedures for teachers to follow? And what would you say to them? And then my next question I'll follow up later with career and technical education.
Sure. What I'd say is establish really clear metrics. Like, let's take the politics out of this. Let's say, what numbers are we going to go by to say this is what we need to see in order to be open physically in the fall? This is when we see numbers changing, an increase in the 7-day positivity rate, or when we see something that tells us, hey, we need to pull back, then how do we do that? How are we going to treat positive cases? How are we going to design the school so that it is actually a safe space? Because there are a lot of things we just don't know about this virus and its transmissibility through children. And we don't need to sit here and navel gaze and theorize about what that looks like. What we need to do is be as objective as possible. And this isn't just for students and for parents, it's for teachers. Teachers are the ones who I'm seeing who are saying, I don't feel safe right now. I don't feel like we've got a good plan in place. I would like us to do something more like what I'm seeing from my peers in some different school districts. So I think having real metrics in place, that's the first thing. If you are going to have schools that are open, we need the resources to do so, right? You can't just say, oh, we can have plexiglass in different places. We can use this space in this way or that way, redesign it or have this PPE. That costs money. And the average costs that we're seeing, in so many different counties, average costs are in the millions of dollars, right? This isn't a small thing. So if you're going to do it, then make sure that you've got the resources to do it well, or else you shouldn't be doing it. Finally, you got to keep the other side of that coin is virtual education. And we can't afford for our kids to fall behind. We just can't. And if you look at inequities in education, the kids who have lower income kids, those are the ones who are being the hardest hit by this. Because some kids can go out and get private tutoring and this, that, and the third, but the ones who can't, they're just falling farther behind. It's going to create a generational education gap that we can't allow to take place. So if you're going, and that's why I say, make a decision and roll with it. And that means if we're going to invest in the virtual education, then let's spend our time developing that in a robust way. And that's really where we need to be. And I think the state needs to show some leadership on that and make sure they're helping out our school districts. And they're giving those clear metrics to our school districts. The school board members I've talked to, Matt, what they say is, when I ran for school board, I was not planning on making decisions on whether or not we should even have school. Like, that is not something that was, and certainly not from a public health standpoint. So I think making sure we're equipping people to have these conversations thoughtfully, that's the key. And both the state and federal government need to be supportive of school districts that make decisions in the best interests of the families and the teachers who live there.
Follow up, Matt?
And then my second follow-up question on education. I'm a technology education teacher, which falls under the umbrella of career and technical education. Just looking through your website a little bit and your educational policy, you briefly mentioned career and technical education a little bit regarding community colleges. What do you see in from a career and technical standpoint, education-wise, in middle school and high school, and especially with the Carl Perkins funding that comes from the federal government that is so vital to these hands-on, career-ready educational aspects there? What is your vision for CTE in that middle and high school realm?
I think it just needs a lot more investment. I think we know that we've got a huge skills gap that's going to be widening in the years to come. When we look at what the jobs that are going to allow people to grow in place and for communities to thrive, a lot of them are going to be in these skilled spaces. And so career and technical education, that's going to be a critical space. We've got, your manufacturers that are leaving all across my district, but if you have a skill, that's something you can always build and carry with you and grow. It's not just that, we talk about apprenticeships, and I do a lot of work with labor unions. I used to work in a union. And so for me, just recognizing those apprenticeships are powerful. That is a pathway throughout your future. And so I think just making sure that we recognize in every community, these are things we should make sure that youth have opportunities. That pathway to success, I think there's an overemphasis on going to college. And I know the hypocrisy of that because, like I said, I went to the 25th grade. I spent a lot of money on my education in higher education. And that's one path for me to be able to do the jobs that I want to do. But for other folks, it doesn't actually require a 4-year college degree after school. There are so many things that you can do if we design it properly. So middle and high school, that's important. I'll tell you, Matt, one important thing to me, though, is that disproportionately, sometimes we track kids pretty early. So we say, these are the type of jobs that you can have access to, and those are the type of jobs and this kid is destined for college. I think we've got to make sure every kid can make that decision, can have those exposures and say, this is the path that I want to go on, and those opportunities are available in their community.
Okay, Andrea, and then I'm going to ask a question on manufacturing economic development. Go ahead, Andrea.
In the, I guess, continuing vein of what should probably be taken out of politics, this is on the environment. I'm an independent, but I've spent a good deal of time, and I'll spend probably more time trying to explain to conservatives why the environment and protecting the environment, particularly water, should be a natural fit for a conservative, because it is so much more expensive to treat 1% of the fresh water we have to be able to drink in the future than it is just not to mess it up in the first place. So I was just wondering if you agreed, as far as explaining to the voters and your fellow congressmen, should you be elected, that there are some environmental aspects that really aren't partisan.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, Andrea, this is probably where you'll hear me sound the most progressive, is that I'm just like, what are we doing to our environment? I mean, what are we doing? The climate crisis, one, it's real. Two, there's a huge role for humans in impacting climate. Three, all is not lost. If we work now to address our climate crisis, we're gonna, my son is 5 years old. The world that he's going to be an adult in is dramatically going to be impacted by the decisions we make today. And so that's why I say, you show me the science on how we can get to a 45% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, and I'll say that's the policy we need to follow. You show me the science on how we get to net zero by 2050, because we do need to address climate change. That is a critical necessity for our survival as humans. In terms of the conservationist argument, I think similarly to we just had this big victory here with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline being canceled here in my district. And I say it's a big victory. It's a big victory with a big coalition. So for climate crisis enthusiasts who are more progressive on that issue, which, like I said, I am, I'm happy because it says, hey, let's invest on clean and renewable energy. I love the economic impact of investing in clean and renewable energy, and the opportunity is there. But for my libertarian friends, they're just like, that's right. Don't screw with my property rights. Like, don't bring your pipeline through my yard, through my family's homestead. That's not what we're supposed to be as America. That coalition, like, that's who we are. That's who we should be. There's a different reason for us to agree that that's the wrong thing to do. So I'm so glad at that outcome. But yeah, Andrew, I think that I'll be honest. I gave a nod to President Trump on price transparency in healthcare. I'll say that I'm disgusted with how anti-science he is. There's no reason to consistently refute facts and objective information. You have to at least give a nod to the fact that we have more than enough data to tell us to stop doing certain things, and so just stop doing it.